Welcome to the Ramon Foster Show, brought to you, as always, by the Get-Go Cafe and Market. I am Eddie Provident, filling in for DK as he travels Europe, in particular Serbia. With me is my main man, Ramon Foster. Moan, how's it going, buddy?
Man,
Happy Monday.
Good. Happy Monday, man. You know what? Start of a great week. Let's continue with that way.
Man.
Yes, we'll say this off top. Eddie's in for the week.
I'm in for the week. You got to deal with me. Deal with it in the comments section.
He's not a substitute teacher, okay? You treat him with respect.
That's right. Moan, it is the first week of official football season. We had real football on Thursday. It was the Jaguars and the Raiders, if you want to call that real football.
We'll call it something.
We'll call it something. But the Steelers play on Saturday, the first official game of the preseason, Saturday versus the Seahawks. My question for you, and I really wanted to ask you this all weekend. I was excited about this. What is that first week of preparation like? What's it like for the rookies? What's it like for the vets? How does that go for you guys?
Well, the first thing you do is you check the schedule and see if it's a home or an away game, because if it's an away game, you have the opportunity to basically get like an early break, okay? And for those guys, they'll be practicing all the way up to game day. It is a home game against the Seahawks, man. But that week is a little bit of a, not necessarily a scale back, but a little bit of okay, we got to start breaking down who the team is going to be. And then you start to realize this too, because the coaches ended up introducing you to stuff like game plans of the teams you're going to go against. You can start telling what sets you're going to be getting into throughout that game weekend to start focusing on, honestly, your bread and butter of what the season is going to look like too. So that in itself is a little bit change of pace. You're still going to do the team building stuff as far as like iron sharpens iron with, let's just say in general, like O-line versus D-line. Backs on backers, although you start to scale back a little bit, start pushing the young guys to the forefront to see who's going to position themselves for a roster spot, honestly. But as the week goes on, you start to taper off a little bit with practice, with reps for the guys who are going to end up playing a whole lot. And you just continue that cycle of really treating it like a game week. The night before, usually you either got to travel or the night before the game at home, you'll have the ability to get I'm talking about the most simple game plan for your opponent. If available, you'll have the opportunity to watch some film on the team. Playing the Seahawks, you'll look at what their defensive scheme looks like. You'll look at some guys that are still there. But I know this first game will be maybe some vets, but it'll end up being mostly young guys that you've never seen before on a new team. So it's really a dice shoot when it comes down to what you're actually going to go against, which is why it's better to have a bunch of young guys playing that game too.
So how's it differ from, so a guy like George Pickens or a guy like Kenny Pickett, they're pretty much guaranteed a roster spot. Nothing that they're going to do is going to mess them up versus a guy like Jaylen Warren or, one of the later round picks. Like how does it, that preparation during the week, how does it differ? Because you were that undrafted guy that had a chip on the shoulder, that had something to prove. What's the difference there for those guys?
I think honestly, Eddie, I know everybody's in the same boat. Like, you're going to make the team, and that you got to be able to make plays during the game. For a guy like George, his mindset is, I'm trying to position myself during the season. I'm sure somebody's talked to him like, look, these preseason games is an audition for you. You have to be on top of your games. Balls come your way, get them. A guy like him, he'll probably come out a little bit earlier than most, than somebody that's a little bit down the line as far as the receiving room goes. He may do a quarter and a half, maybe an entire half. And then you got to say, okay, we've seen enough of this guy. We can watch what he does and we'll sit him. For the guys that are a little bit down the line as far as the depth chart go, they want to play the entire game. They want to show something on special teams. We've talked about this time and time again as far as what is the importance of your role on the team. It's 5 receivers, but it's usually 3 that are your primary players. And because of that, everybody else has to find a niche somewhere else, whether that's been a gunner, whether that's been on kick return, punt block. You got to find a role. And that's what those guys life is like for the undrafted, the later round guys, or the new free agents. Find your value somewhere in the game. And that's the beauty of having the preseason games. I was a fan, honestly, of the 4, just simply because those young guys get a bigger audition. Yeah, exactly, man. And that was kind of taken away. So the team, for the most part, is kind of set. and you really better be dynamic to show your talents with those 3 games.
I'm interested to be, I'm going up to Latrobe later today. And I'm really excited to see Mike Tomlin and how he interacts with these players, because it was hard to see that at Heinz Field last year. How was he with you guys, especially your younger years? How was he, leading up to these preseason games? He always talks about leaning into being uncomfortable, that kind of stuff. Did he do anything to make you guys more uncomfortable during this week, or did he really just focus on more of the game, the game prep and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, man, he's never really played that role as far as let me put him in a bad situation, because he's a guy that came from William and Mary.
Yeah.
There wasn't many eyes on those type of schools in the early 90s and 80s and stuff like that, just simply because technology didn't allow it. When it comes down to ball, he gives you that opportunity to kind of still, Monday through Wednesday, they'll practice for themselves. And, later on in the week, they'll start to scale in. How do we make you successful? Because if you are that special player that I can get for the lower half of the roster, then let me find out. So he'd prep guys and let guys know more than anything the importance of what this week means. He's probably going to show clips of certain players that's come by year after year. This is what he did in preseason. This is how he did it. This is what you need to do. Like, that's him, because he appreciates, honestly, a little bit of the underdog. And like, he enjoys. You ever been around somebody that's like, man, I enjoy watching this sport come together. Like me personally, I've become a bigger baseball fan. And as a youth, when I didn't understand it or appreciate it, I was like, nobody wants to watch boring baseball. But then I see the strategy. Then I see a guy's failure, continue to get him. And then he finds a little bit of an edge somewhere to get a hit in, or a pitcher that's having a real good game. And that's him when building a team. He has a real interest in that. And for the guys that are involved in the process, you'll hear him kind of allude to that. And that's what like St. Vincent is for him. As you ask him, what is he like during this week? Like, you'll see him lean in, as you just said, to the fact that this is your first audition. The eye in the sky, the old saying, it does not lie. and he is a factor. And this is the other part too, Eddie. Like, some people just don't practice well, they just do good and then they get just by. But soon as those lights come on, soon as you on the big field and you got your jersey on, like, some people have that switch. And he is a student of finding those type of guys too. So no, it's really a good process. Like, I'm thinking about it now, just watching guys have no clue, honestly, that are the lower half of the roster, like, they're clueless. But like, guys that's been around and watched, it's like, he at least is going to make practice squad, just because what his process has been like.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of players on this roster that have a lot to prove. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of those players that got something to prove and how they're going to prove it. I want to talk about your position, the O-line, man. Yeah. So let's stick around. We'll be right back after a brief break. This is the Ramon Foster Show on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. All right, welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show. I'm Eddie Provident. That's Ramon. Ramon, we talked about people on this roster that need to prove something. Yeah. Now, I talked to an ex-offensive lineman while I was up at Latrobe. I got a chance to have a conversation with this guy. Yeah. He really, really liked Kendrick Green a lot. Mm-hmm. And the reason why he liked Kendrick Green is because he said Kendrick Green's a finisher. And he said this team is lacking finishers outside of Kendrick Green. Your offensive line, your days, you had 3, 4, 5 finishers on that line.
Pride in it.
Yeah, you took pride. Exactly. So this is a 2-part question. One, what does it take to build that mentality to be a finisher on the offensive line? And then number 2, do you think it's possible that anybody on this offensive line other than Kendrick Green can build that and become that for this team?
Man, that is an interesting question. And honestly, I think it's a matter of difference of eras a little bit too. Like, we all came from a grimy run type of offense in college too. Like, think about Pounce's run. Think about what we did at Tennessee. Dave was known for pulling, and honestly, Al just better know that that's what we were going to do. He didn't have a choice but to do what we were going to do.
6'8" Army Ranger. I'm not messing with 6'10" Army Ranger. I'm not messing with him. Come on, man. Like,
but that was our mentality too. Right. And I'll say this. I think this line will grow into that. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be, just this is their identity. I'll get to that too in a second. But you got to think, this is free agents. This is a couple homegrown guys. This is a very young guy at left tackle. Like, they're probably trying to figure out what they're going to be. And that's why I said for them, like, there can't be many off days for this group of dudes, just simply because they got to mesh. They got to gel. They got to come together a little bit. Kendrick Green being a kid right now that's finishing. Well, I'll say this too. Look at his size. He has to. He's on a smaller end, and he's probably been fighting his entire career as far as trying to make sure that he held his own and not get pushed back and really show his worth. If we're just being honest about this, he's had to do this. And this is the other side of that question about finishing is offenses have kind of changed a lot as far as the run game goes. Like, running is honestly just a compliment when it used to be the focal point, even on the college level. The way nobody really gets down in a 3-point stance, the way you look at the way the air raids and the way teams spin the ball across the field, like the nasty side of it has kind of been pushed over to how good can you pass block. I was talking to somebody recently about like the combine conversations. Like, some of these guys get drafted and have never actually went into a 3-point stance, even in the run game. And I know you kind of see that too. So it's a matter of us honestly may have to watch a little bit of a revolution a little, or even evolution a little bit with how the game has kind of moved past some of the nastiness. But I'll say this.
Go ahead.
They play ball in the AFC North.
Yeah.
If they don't learn in camp, they're going to learn during the season where they get embarrassed, where they can't get first downs. And coach is going to have to tell them, look, we got to get a little bit nastier. And hey, hopefully it happens sooner than later.
So how's that make you feel? Like what you just talked about, the lack of that, the lack of the 3-point stance, the more of the air raid type ball, more pass blocking. I mean, like we said, you guys took pride in that side of things. Like,
it's been a little nasty.
How's that make you feel, man? Like, seeing the game change that way?
I think they'll be fine. They got to learn each other a little bit more. Like, there's a lot of communication going on right now in camp about what they can and should be doing. Hey, man, what do I need of you? Like, Pounce and Moan tell me, Moan, clean them up. And I would tell Pounce, I'm going to hold him. I got him right here. Clean him up like now. Like, we used to go looking for bodies, but I don't feel much about it. I'm indifferent about it simply because I need to see what this offense rhythm is going to look like too. Like, we were adamant about running the ball with our OCs. We were adamant about setting a tone. And I know Najee kind of does it a little bit himself, but this is going to be a trial by fire, I think, when it comes down to, who's going to call on the next person to, kind of get it together. All it takes is one punch in the mouth. Yeah. And Pittsburgh the same way I know it. This fan base the same way I know it. If they're not a gritty group, they're going to hear
about it.
And they're either going to be embarrassed and step up, or it'll be the next guy.
I'm interested to see what happens this year, specifically because of who they brought in.
Right.
Mason Cole seems to me to be that grittier guy. James Daniels doesn't come across that way, but when you get him on the field, I mean, I watched him. I watched him in camp the other day. Yeah, they were pass blocking, and that move that Reggie White used to do with the one arm.
Yeah,
I watched James Daniels do it to one of the defensive linemen, man, and he manhandled the dude. So I'm excited to see if those two new guys bring that little bit of infusion and nastiness. And
that's the part that I was making too, like the new guys, the free agents, like they're probably finding their way. And this is the era in which neither one of us have actually dealt with this many free agents and young guys on the offensive line. So give it time. And if it's a little bit concerning during the season, then we'll have to talk about this again, Eddie.
Yeah. I kind of hope that they use Najee the right way and make that go back to that run identity, because if this team is going to be good, and you've talked about it, DK's talked about it, Dale's talked about it in his columns, if they're going to be good, it's going to be because they make Najee the focal point of the offense. Yep. And then they're going to have to bring that grit. They just got to grow up quicker. We see it, we're calling it out. And if we see it, the coaches are seeing it. Everyone else is seeing it. So
yes, indeed.
Well, let's take one more break, and as DK would say, we'll get to the only segment that matters. Hey, Moan.
Hey, Moan.
All right, welcome back to the Ramon Foster Show. It is the only segment that matters, as my man DK would say, the Hey Moan segment. And we've got one from Steel Slim. I don't have a real name on this guy. He's in the YouTube section, the comment section, but that's cool. And he says, Hey Moan, do you think Deontay getting a contract extension is going to have any effect on what happens to Chase Claypool, especially if these two rookies, talking about Calvin Austin and George Pickens, ball out this season? And he says, another great show. Thanks for all you guys do, with a couple of thumbs up. We appreciate that, Steel Slim. Always appreciate it. So what do you think, man? Do you think, I think Chase Claypool's gonna have something to prove with a chip on his shoulder this year. What do you think?
Man, I kind of see it the same way. And this is, if he's a competitor like we think he is, he'll see what Deontay got as far as getting paid, because that was brought up, and say, well, I got to get some of that too. You know, like that's the beauty of what the NFL is also is, look, if you do what you're supposed to do and you're that type of guy, you're going to get your just due as far as the pay goes. If for anything, like you said, the guys behind him, you know, what makes a person better for the most part? It's competition. It's knowing that, honestly, you're not safe. Coach Tomlin kind of does that a little bit with guys. Is he's always going to bring in talent. He's always going to bring in somebody that you got to turn your eye to 2 or 3 times to say, hey, look, if I don't stay right, then I'll be out. And that's what's kind of happened a little bit. We spoke about this again last week when, you know, he kind of sets that pressure on you. Although you don't have to look over your shoulder, he's going to tell you exactly who you are and what you are to the team. But you know competition when you see it. You know, a lot of people have been talking about George Pickens. Now, let's be honest. If George Pickens is on this team and he's actually playing well as a rookie, and Chase does that Minnesota thing, what is the fan base going to be asking for? They're going to be asking for the other guy.
Yes, sir.
They're going to say, we want a ball player that's just going to play ball. And that's something that he's going to have to fight off too, is the public perception of things. Like, to me, Chase Claypool's in a situation where you have a first-round quarterback drafted behind the starter. Like, that's this situation. Is, you know, eventually you better Aaron Rodgers this situation, or are you going to turn into a quarterback, a wide receiver and waiting to get out? Like, those are the situations. That's the circumstance in which he's presented with right now, is we can find your replacement. He's right behind you.
Yeah.
And if you don't compete the way we need you to, it's easier to just franchise tag you and let you be a free agent the next year.
So if you're sitting in Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin's seat, and Chase Claypool balls out this year, George Pickens balls out this year, what do you do?
I gotta sign Chase, and you want to know why? Because George is still cheap. Because you're still really cheap at quarterback too. That's the determining factor on keeping talent. Having a cheaper starting quarterback or a rookie. Those are the teams that can sell out and go get a lot of talent. Look what Cincinnati did. Look what Baltimore has tried to do. When did Kansas City win the Super Bowl? When Patrick Mahomes was on a rookie deal. You gotta sign Chase just to keep the quarterback comfortable and in a good vibe as far as his play on the field. That's the beauty of it too. And Deontay comes up again in 2 years, so you can decide if George Pickens is going to be his replacement or not, or Calvin Austin is going to play a bigger role in the offenses. One thing the Steelers do, and they've done it well for decades now, is they scout and find the right talent that fits that team.
Yes, they do. And just looking at what they have right now on offense, they can go 5 wide with all wide receivers. They could put Freiermuth and Najee out there with the other 3 receivers. They have so many different things that they could do. It really, like, all these quarterbacks have to do is just don't mess up.
Fine.
Just don't mess up. Just find one of them.
Who's the one for the day, man? And that's why I'm being humble about our approach this year to the season, because we are without Ben. We can acknowledge that. Okay. But if any other franchise quarterback in the league had these weapons, they'd be salivating.
Yes, they would.
Okay. And that's why a lot of people picking the Steelers to go 4th, 3rd. I actually have an open bet with somebody say they can finish 2nd in the AFC North. And I'm going to hold by that one just simply because I know the outfit of this team despite the quarterback.
I can't, and I know I sound like I'm repeating DK, but I can't see the offensive line can't be worse than it was last year.
Right.
I don't see that.
No.
And if they get average quarterback play with slightly better offensive line play with that defense, I don't see how they don't win 10 games. I don't. But call me a homer, whatever. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I was going to tell you, we got to stop, man. We're too much homerisms, man. Somebody might try to call us out for it. Don't go to that homer site. Let's be cool.
Hey, we'll see, man.
Yeah. No, but I truly feel that way about it. If I figured we was going to be trash, I'd say that. But this could be a very interesting year, considering also they're not playing the first place schedule as far as AFC teams go.
Yeah.
That's one thing that Cincinnati did last year that they won't have the luxury of doing this year. You got to see every division's number one team. And how will they stack up this year? Yep. I'll just lay that out there for conversation.
And an underrated part about this season, too, a lot of less travel this season. A lot less travel. And that helps. That helps with the recovery. That helps with a lot. I know you know that.
I know.
Moan, it's been fun. This is 1 day down, 4 to go for me. I'm sure the people in the comments section will love it. It's been fun, buddy. We'll get back here on Tuesday. And we'll talk about what I saw up at camp today.
No doubt.
But for Ramon Foster, for DK Pittsburgh Sports, for DK over in Serbia, I'm Eddie Provident. Thank you for tuning in to the Ramon Foster Show. We will see you on Tuesday.